guess I better ask you, Ellie, to tell us a little bit about your life before you ever had pain.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Ali West, and I've been suffering from chronic low back pain for the last 4.5 years. My life before I became unwell was a very, very busy and a very, very stressful life. I was a personal assistant to a managing director of a large company. I also managed a diverse and large property portfolio. My life was busy, it was hectic, there was a lot of driving, a lot of sitting, and a lot of stress. On a daily basis, I worked maybe between 60 and 80 hours a week. My standard of living was good. We lived fast, we earned money, and we spent it all, basically. And so social life was hectic as well as my professional life.
And yet, despite being very busy and living life to the full, no pain whatsoever, and, happy in a relationship, and all things were good to a certain extent.
To a certain extent, everything was good, apart from my stress load at work. Everything at home was fine. We'd just built and extended our house, and everything was good. Everything was good, no pain.
Okay. And then do you want to tell us about how you first developed pain?
Okay. I had a day off. Stupidly, and I decided that I would try and be a housewife for the day, and I did some washing, and I was carrying a washing basket down the stairs and slipped and fell maybe 4 or 5 stairs and landed on my bottom on the floor onto a tiled floor. Immediately I was painful, felt like someone had kicked me in the bum, but expected that anyway, got up, took a couple of paracetamol. It was very, very sore, and the pain didn't go away. The pain increased, in fact, and I found it very, very difficult to walk. I was walking like I'd just got off a horse, and it was just, the pain escalated very, very quickly.
And then, I know you've had several scans and opinions over the years, but do you want to tell us about, I suppose, the first 6 months, the impact of the pain on your life?
Okay. Well, I suppose after maybe 3 or 4 days of being in agonising pain, I went to my GP, who prescribed anti-inflammatories, and like a good girl, I went home and took them and had the bad stomach, and then didn't take them, but the pain was intense, and it was affecting my ability to do my job because I couldn't concentrate because I was very, very painful. Sitting, especially for long periods of time, whether it was in the car or whether it was at my desk, was just impossible. And I started to adapt myself to my pain. Therefore, I would stand up at my desk, or I would make excuses not to drive places. Meanwhile, my pain was completely out of control, and it was starting to have a very negative effect on me personally and my ability to cope, especially with my job. And I became very emotional and extremely tearful a lot of the time, and felt very out of control.
And in that period of time, you would have seen a range of healthcare professionals, but what did you think was wrong with your back and pelvis at that stage?
Well, I just assumed that I'd fractured my coccyx. That's what I'd been told, that it was quite a common thing. If you had a fall onto your bottom, that your coccyx was fractured. It's going to take months to heal. It's notoriously difficult for it to heal. Here, have some more painkillers. So I was referred to see an orthopaedic surgeon quite quickly, and he saw me and said, "I know what that is, straight away, no problem, we can sort that out for you today." So he did a non-guided steroid injection into my coccyx, which, it wasn't a very pleasant procedure, but I was just so grateful that somebody said, "I can help you, and this will sort it out." Of course, as soon as the local anaesthetic wore off, I bounced out of his office because the local anaesthetic was in, and I couldn't feel a thing for the first time in weeks. But then as soon as the local anaesthetic wore off, the pain was back again. And that procedure was repeated maybe 4 or 5 times without any guided needle or just, by eye, each time became more and more traumatic for me. And I started to actually dread the treatment more than the pain. And it didn't work. It just didn't work.
And this is kind of going back a little bit, but how long was it before you realised that you had actually fractured your coccyx? There was a period of time between the onset before they realised there was actually a fracture.
Yeah, well, I think ostensibly because I was presenting, I was a middle-aged woman, perimenopausal, presenting with low back pain. I wasn't taken very seriously. Although I had a mechanism of injury, I wasn't taken very seriously. Firstly by my general practitioner and then by the orthopaedic surgeon I saw, who after giving me 4 of these injections decided to pass me on to somebody else who could possibly help me. Then I was referred for an MRI scan. When the scan results came back, yes, I had fractured my coccyx and it had healed in a particularly horrible angle, and that was the explanation for the pain. And also my sacral discs were buggered as well.
And I suppose we'll skip forward and I'll ask you first of all now, how are you at the moment? And then we'll talk about your journey in terms of getting here.
I'm fine. I'm good. I'm not pain-free. I won't lie to you. I'm not pain-free. It was quite painful sitting there for a while now. But I've learnt to cope. And I think that's I've got control over it, and I think that is the main thing that I didn't have. I was completely out of control, and I was in the control of the healthcare professionals, each person saying to me, I know what that is, I can help you. I know what that is, I can help you. And with each procedure and the pain escalating and escalating and escalating, it was just, horrendous experience, really.
And then we've covered, we'll say, how interventions like injections didn't help, but you also had physiotherapy and several other treatments. Can you tell us about how your body responded to those other various treatments in terms of the initial pain response and then how you tried to keep going with them?
Well, I was referred to pain management when basically everybody had given up on me because, I was a very difficult patient because I was in pain all the time. And I had lost everything. I had to leave my job. I was unable to work. And with that loss became loss of income, became loss of self, became loss of almost everything that I knew about myself. I spent 6 months face down on the sofa in the most terrible depression, anxiety. I'd never experienced a day's anxiety in my life. The anxiety was so extreme. I can't even begin to tell you. And what the gentlemen were talking about this morning, this whole cycle that happens, the pain kicks off anxiety, which kicks off depression, which kicks off pain. And it's just this huge cycle going on and on and on. Meanwhile, the pain escalates and escalates and escalates. I was given these new treatments that were going to help me, which deeply traumatized me. And again, just exacerbated the whole anxiety, pain, depression cycle.
And if we looked at, when we look at all that mix of factors, there are probably several different ways in which you can change that path. We'll just hear from later on in the day the approaches like mindfulness and CBT and exercise and pain medicine and so on. But when we look at if we look at exercise, for example, a lot of people with back and pelvic pain will have been given exercises to strengthen their muscles and strengthen particularly their pelvis. Do you want to tell us about your experience of strengthening your pelvis?
Yes, that's what I was told. I had a very weak pelvic floor and that I needed to do pelvic floor exercises with some gusto, shall we say. And so I was given a little device by the pelvic floor lady, the incontinence lady. And so I was meant to use this little device twice a day for my pelvic floor muscles so that they would strengthen and that it would hold my coccyx and the injury would be protected. It was like, well, I can't even begin to describe it. It was like medieval torture. And it didn't make things better. In fact, it made it a whole lot worse.
And yet, how long would you have persisted with that, with the best of intentions?
Well, it was a sort of like a 10-week program of twice a day of using the pelvic floor stimulator. Yeah.
And of course, it's easy to say that doesn't make any sense when it was making your pain worse, but it's another example to us that people who are in pain will do almost anything to try and improve.
I would have crawled across a bed of nails. If somebody had said to me, I can take your pain away for even 1 hour, you can have 1 hour with no pain, I would have said, grand, I will do anything. What would you want me to do? Because it was there, ever present. I didn't sleep. The lack of sleep contributed to the anxiety, the depression, the pain. The cycle just went on and on and on. The days were so long, it was ridiculous. I never slept, because the pain was so intense.
And then if we look at when you came and entered, we'll say, the study that we did, the next step in terms of your management options was quite an invasive procedure as well. Do you want to tell us about what was in mind?
Yeah, well, I was then referred to a spinal surgeon because I was a hopeless case. And they offered me to remove my coccyx for me. Now, luckily for me, I'd done a lot of research on that and found anecdotally that actually a coccygeotomy doesn't work. In some cases it may, but in 90% of the cases, a coccygeotomy just adds fuel to the fire. I was then offered a spinal cord stimulator, which, to be fair now, was something I was considering before I came to see you. And it seemed to me a less invasive option rather than somebody actually chopping my coccyx out. And then I was told I could possibly be doubly incontinent after they removed my coccyx. So I said, you're all right.
So then there will probably be people wondering, saying, well, how did you get to where you are now? Because one thing we know is that you've said already you're not cured. There clearly wasn't any overnight success, and I'm pretty sure you're still having episodes where it's, less fun than it should be.
Yeah.
So do you want to tell us about your experience of how you've managed to improve your life?
I think when I first came to see you, I was at the end of my tether. I mean, you know that. And I think, firstly, it was like talking to a brick wall because I just had so many treatments and so many interventions and so many people telling me it was this and it was that, and you need to walk with sticks and you might be in a wheelchair, and et cetera, et cetera. And of course, add everything to that of the loss of everything, financially up the Swanee, and about to lose the house, the relationship on the rocks, my sense of self just desperate. I think coming to see you, it took you about 6 weeks of talking to me and making me realise, actually, we're not going to do all these bendy exercises, because that's what I thought when I first came to see you, that you were going to have me on some sort of regime, traditional physiotherapy. But actually, there was a breakthrough, and I don't know whether you remember, Kieran, the breakthrough when it finally went. Do you know what I mean? That I can help myself and that I can contribute to my wellness purely by just letting go. Literally letting go of the negativity and letting go of my pelvic muscles, which were like this constantly, and even more so thanks to my pelvic floor physiotherapist. Thank you very much.
Do you want to talk, because I remember that happening, but as well as letting go physically, because of the pain, that's also associated for a lot of people with letting go of a whole range of emotions that have been bottled up for quite a period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was like I was giving myself permission that I could let go. And I think that a lot of the pain that I was experiencing was because I was holding on. I was holding on to so much stuff. The stress, the lack, the loss, everything was just embodied in my pelvis. And just to let it go. Now, that wasn't an instant process. I was saying I had a eureka moment with Kieran there, but it was just the start, the spark. For 5 seconds, I didn't have any pain in my back. And that was literally it. And I cried all over Kieran. It was the first time I'd been pain-free in 4 years. just 5 seconds without pain. And it was a eureka moment. And I think that gave me the hope. And I think hope for chronic pain patients is key. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. It might be a tiny, tiny little chink of light at the end of the tunnel. But I was told all along, this is hopeless, you're going to have to learn to live with this. And hope is key. And learning to move and learning not to be frightened of your body. And if it hurts, then it hurts, you know. But don't, because I wasn't I? I was like one of these people go, oh, Jesus, every time I got up. And, you know, Kieran taught me how not to do that. And things have changed dramatically.
And it's important to, again, realise that there's several speed bumps on that journey. So, for
Absolutely.
example, from that day, there will have been several setbacks and flare-ups. And do you want to think, I suppose, tell us at this stage, what kind of things have flared up your pain, and in what kind of ways does your pain impact you now?
Well, strangely enough, it's not the physical. I can be very physical. I've started running, and I walk a lot, and all those things. It's not physical stuff that affects my pain. It's stress. Mm-hmm. If I'm stressed about something, then immediately all my muscles in my pelvis just do this, and away we go again. So I suppose it's actually learning that there is a link between what's going on up here and what's going on in your body. It's a very, very important link, I think. And learning to let go of the stress means that I can let go of the pain.
And again, it isn't easy to get rid of the stressors in life, but one of the things we can do is try and minimise the impact of the external stress on how it affects my body. And from the guys earlier on today, they spoke already about the impact of stress and the close connections between body and mind.
Absolutely.
Because it's very easy to say what some other therapist should do. And it's important to clarify here that even in the study that Ali was involved in, not everybody responds, not everybody gets it. We don't want to give the impression that everybody has a wonderful story. And it's not an easy path, but one of the key things is making the connections between body and mind, that it isn't physical or psychological, real or imaginary.
Yeah.
If you could describe now, if you were going to say what was wrong with your back or pelvis, how would you summarise what was wrong with it at this stage?
At this stage, or
yeah, reflecting back.
Okay, reflecting back, I think there was a mechanism of injury, and it was sore. That injury should have healed itself, and I should have been able to move on. Plenty of people have coccygeal fractures, and they heal quite easily. I think the stress in my professional life and financial pressure just drove it. It just drove it. I think it was my body's way of saying, actually, stop. Stop now. You know, you cannot continue like this. And I think if I hadn't have had the fall, I would have suffered from chronic neck pain, or I would have suffered from migraine headaches, or, you know, some other chronic condition. I really believe that. I think it was my body's way of saying, right, you've got an injury now, you can stop.
And one of the great things from my point of view when I hear Ali describe that there is, that really sounds like Ali gets this. So for example, if Ali had much better pain and she felt it was because I really learned how to stretch my back, there's probably a good likelihood that something else could happen down the road, because, so some of us here are going to sprain our ankle, sprain our neck, hurt ourselves. But if you really get what happens to your body, there's a great chance you can get over that speed bump.
Absolutely, and I think that the whole mind-body link is only just being understood, because I saw so many medical professionals, and not one of them asked me, actually, how are you? It was, what happened to your back? Oh, isn't that terrible? We need to do something invasive, intrusive and painful. I think that it's so important, the person's story, to listen to the person's story and not just write them off, because I was middle-aged, overweight, certain type of woman that was absolutely hysterical every time I sat down in front of a medical professional because I wanted them to help me. I think if you listen, that's the key.
So at this stage, what are the plans at the time when we first met, you were somebody who wouldn't travel, and you had stopped maybe traveling and staying in friends' houses because you didn't like, being in different beds or sitting, and you were using a cushion when you sat to move around. What's life like now? Work, travel?
Back to normal. Obviously, I still get pain, and I would be stupid if I could think that I could drive for 4 or 5 hours and not get up and stretch and have a cup of tea or whatever. But I'd say that would be most people, back to normal. Going to university in September, going to do a postgraduate degree and hoping to move on. I know that there will always be pain because I'm in pain now. As I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm in pain now, but I control it. I use mindfulness. I use meditation. That's been a very good tool for me. I used to think meditation was really creepy. It used to creep me out with some guy in my ear saying, "You're walking down a lovely riverbank." No, I'm not. I'm in pain. But I've learned active meditation and mindfulness, and I think to live now. I'm in pain now, but I might not be in pain in half an hour. I might be, but I might not be in pain tomorrow. That's the way I had to look at it. And before, it was just pain, 24/7. So I think just having a different outlook on life, and realising, I think especially for me, being a Gemini, I like to be in control. And being in control of my pain has just given me back my life, actually.
And then if we think about, almost we can be pretty sure every single person you see will have the best of intentions, same as everybody in this room. And again, we can't emphasize enough, not everybody responds to what we're doing either.
No.
But now you have an audience of 100 people who will be treating people in pain. What's your take-home message from your story?
I think you need to treat people as individuals, and try and understand what's really going on. If someone's presenting to you with chronic headaches, or someone's presenting to you with neck pain or back pain or pain in their ankle or wherever, what's really going on, underneath. People will say, no, everything's fine. But I think you just have to dig that bit deeper. And if you listen and ask them to tell their story, not all the medical procedures that they've had, but how is things at home? How are things at work? What's your relationship like? All these deep and personal questions that you can get a good idea of where that person is, and nobody asked me that. Nobody asked me that until I met you.
But I am a particularly nosy person.
Well, you are. But I think, and to listen carefully to what a person is saying, not what you think they're saying, but what they are actually saying. I used to go and I used to cry all the time, but that was my way of please just listen to me. Just listen to me. People might come across as aggressive or, really, really depressed or whatever, but just listen, I think, is just so key.
And again, from my experience of dealing with Ali, I would say, is a very resilient person. And yet even the most resilient of us in certain situations will find it hard to cope. I would suggest that most of us in this room, if we went through an experience like that, we wouldn't always be smiling and skipping around the place and cheerful. And, it's important to think that we sometimes talk about things like non-compliance. The patient didn't do the exercise. It's their fault, the bad patients. And, if the patient isn't ready, we have to try and meet them halfway and try and bring them with us rather than stepping back and kind of pointing the finger.
I think a holistic view is really, really important, to treat the whole person. Obviously, as physiotherapists or pain management or GPs or whatever, you're looking at the pain and the cause of the pain and you want to sort it out and try and help the person. But it has to be a holistic. I saw a psychotherapist for 18 months thanks to the pain management service that I was a patient with, and I found the psychotherapy extremely helpful and a great way of stress relief and offloading and learning coping strategies. So I think the holistic view is very, very important.
And I think there are a lot of people with stories like Ali where there is a role for physiotherapy, there's a role for pain medicine, there's a role for psychotherapy, there's a role for mindfulness, and for different people, they might choose different paths.
Yeah.
As long as we don't increase fears and help people get to the bottom of their story.